In a world like none other, there comes one man in search of plastic, in search of cons. He is known as Plasticon. Join him as he brings toys from another dimension to a household near you.
This is a bit of a repair guide for the Transformers Action Master Skyfire, or Skyfall, sorry. It's primarily pretty easy. His got very floppy legs, and the floppy legs need to be repaired. So it's a very simple fix. A simple fix is pretty much you use a screwdriver, like a precision screwdriver, and then you'll unscrew the screw in the back and then pull him completely apart. Now this does take some time to do, so don't rush yourself when you're trying to repair one of these guys. I primarily try to set my pieces over to the side while I'm doing that, so that way I don't get rid of like knocking screws off or anything like that. And if you see, I'm just kind of peeling it apart and just trying to see what I can do to get it to work, because it's not an easy thing to do, and then it just kind of pops apart. Now if you notice, his head's still on there, his arms are still on there. I didn't bother to even try to pull any of that apart because there's really no need to do that. But if you notice, he does have the O-ring in here, and the O-ring is the same thing as a G.I. Joe O-ring, so you can find these kind of on eBay pretty cheaply. If you notice the O-ring on here, it's very worn, it's nasty, it's done, it's just not a good piece. And it actually has the J-hook in really good condition. The J-hook's not broke, so I'm grabbing a brand new one that I have from my stash of O-rings to just replace it. And this is a simple fix. A lot of these Action Masters tend to fall over because the legs are extremely loose on them. And normally it's just because of this O-ring being too stretched out. Now occasionally you will have them where the ball joints themselves are a bit loose. That's actually not a hard fix to do either. All you really do is unscrew the leg, pull the leg apart, put a little floor polish or nail polish or something like that on there. But you know, and here it is. Since I've kind of put him together and wiggled him around, make sure he's pretty stiff, and he's a lot tighter than he was before. Before his legs were very loose, and he really wouldn't stand up very well. I mean, you can kind of just bump the table and he would fall over. And that's literally the night and day between the two when it comes to fixing that problem. Now we're going to move on to a few more issues that I wanted to address on this guy. I'm showing a little bit of posing here just make sure, you know, show you guys it's not hard to fix. You know, he can actually hold a pose a lot easier now. But the other problems this guy has are the paint chipping and just paint rubbed off throughout the years. Cool thing I do, I actually have paint pens. So I use paint pens in quite a bit of things that I use. And it really does make it a lot easier than just breaking out a whole pot full of paint and such. So I primarily always say, if you're going to be using paint pens, always have a spare piece of paper around to prime the pens and like shake them up, test them on that. Make sure the paint's flowing before you start doing this. Now the way I do this is I dab. I was actually dabbing on the paint just along the edge of the horns where the horn's supposed to be, and this color is very close to the original color. Not everything is going to be 100% precise, but it's really going to look 100 times better because it didn't have any paint at all there. It was completely gone. If you notice, it looks completely different now. So I continue on here and just put a little bit more paint on the brow portion here, just trying to kind of touch him up and fix him up, because these guys need some love, that's for sure. I think Action Masters are very, very underwritten. They're not very well sought out. I understand why, because they don't actually transform, but I mean, it's no different than you having a pop vinyl on your shelf or something like that nowadays. Things that tend to kind of just lose their luster over time. At least these guys have a little bit of posability to them, so there is a play value to them. Now, if you have them that are complete, great. Mine aren't, but that's okay. I just, decided I would try to fix up good old Skyjack here, because he needed it. He was beat up, very, very beat up. So, trying to fix this crown, because this crown, like I said, is supposed to all be yellow, and all that yellow stuff just kind of rubbed away and got knocked off throughout the years. It just happens. And as you can notice, it looks 100% better now. And honestly, you can't really tell. It's extremely easy to do. And if the color tries to kind of bleed through a little bit, there's no shame in actually doing the other thing and just adding a second coat. Now what I'm doing here is I've got a type of a kind of a purple and a red. So I figured I was going to try this and see how well I could do this. So I'm using this kind of a purple color. It's really close to the magenta that actually is already on Skyjack, but it's not completely there. So I'm just going through right now and just kind of touching up all the bits and pieces I can that have the white showing through. Just gonna, clean it up a little bit, make it look better, and then we'll worry about getting the paint to match a little better here in a few minutes. But when I'm doing this, I'm just kind of just dabbing. I'm not drawing. I'm just basically just taking the tip of the pen and letting the pen do the work. That's one thing a lot of people don't understand when it comes to doing this kind of stuff. Let the tools do the work for you. Don't force the tool, because the tool will actually do what it needs to do. Especially with paint pens. Paint pens can flow a lot if you press way too hard. And if you're trying to control what you're trying to do, it's easier just to dab. Just, stick the tip of the pen against there and just let it do its own thing. Kind of like good old Bob Ross used to say, happy little accidents. Well, this can become some happy little accidents when you do this. It's a very satisfying thing to do, and I don't know, I just enjoy doing this kind of stuff. This kind of stuff is very therapeutic for me, and I enjoy sharing this kind of stuff with you guys, because this stuff also kind of helps some of you guys out there as well. I do know a lot of people enjoy seeing people customize toys and fix them and do that kind of thing, although they might not have the skill set for it, or might not actually have the toys for it, or whatever it is. But it's not to be, frowned on. And the great thing about paint pens is the paint tends to dry fairly quickly. Usually within about half an hour, you can kind of touch things. I wouldn't mess with it too much. Usually I leave them set for about half a day before I actually touch the pieces. But if I'm busy trying to do what I'm doing right now, where I'm going to be mixing the maroon with the red to kind of try to draw in a little more of that magenta color, it's a challenge. And this was a challenge. And it didn't turn out 100% perfect, but hey, I got it good enough to me that it looks good. It's definitely one of those things that I think a lot of people tend to shy away from, is trying to repair their toys, especially if it's chipped up, beat up, missing pieces, something's super loose, they're afraid they're going to mess something up. I can understand the fear, because I've had that issue many times, even working on gold plastic toys, whether it's gold plastic, blue plastic, brown plastic. Those toys can be very scary because they're very brittle. But if you're slow at what you're trying to do and you're taking your time you usually can kind of figure out what works and what doesn't within the realm of whatever tools you have available, time you have available, space you have available. Now, since I live in a small apartment, it's hard for me to have a whole workshop set up. So me and my other half kind of share a whole crafting area in the house. So that's what I do. I tend to set up my camera on a little tripod and try to film what I can and put these little things together for you guys, because I want you guys to see some of the actual stuff I've been doing behind the scenes, because some of the stuff doesn't actually get seen at all, especially when I'm busy trying to do a custom. I don't normally ever break out a camera for that. I usually just take pictures of it when I'm done with it with my usually just my cell phone at this point, because it's easier to do. And it's easier for me to post photos there on YouTube and stuff, so that way you guys can see exactly what goes on. I try to post stuff on Facebook quite a bit for you guys, so that way you guys can see what I've been up to, how things are going, and it's just a way for me to communicate and share with the community. I stay pretty busy with a lot of these little projects on the sides, and I do have other stuff coming up that I've been working on that I haven't really took a lot of photos of. I do have one project I haven't gotten around to actually do anything with yet, but these little repair videos and stuff like that I think are very important, because they help you guys out there that are like, oh, well, I've had this Action Master or this G.I. Joe or this Hot Wheel for X amount of years, and I kind of miss it being nice and pretty, you know, or I want it to look like the character more than what it normally looks like. Sometimes you want to customize them and make them more closer to what the actual toy would look like, or maybe you want to look more like the cartoon. I personally always thought the Action Masters was more of a cartoony vibe, which I actually liked. I think that's what the misconception is between people liking Action Masters versus an actual transforming Transformer. I'm just sitting here just kind of thinking and using my noodle. But here we go. About to take the red pen. And I'm going to take the red pen and I'm going to try to go over some of the bits and pieces I just hit with the kind of maroon color. And this kind of maroonish purple, it's kind of hard to blend. So I get everything kind of wet and such and kind of mess around with it here for a bit, because this is all trial and error. That's what you guys need to realize when it comes to this kind of toy. Like, this type of fixing things and such is not something that you're going to do overnight. It's not a skill you're going to master the first time. There's lots of times that I trial and error things, and sometimes I have to pull the paint completely off a project, or completely pull the project all the way back apart, tear it all the way back down, and redo it just because something did not go correct. But there's nothing wrong with that. Learning is part of doing. And if you guys are willing to put in the time and the effort, you're going to learn, and you're going to create awesome things over time. There hasn't been an artist out there that's picked up a paintbrush and painted his first stroke and was genius at it. There hasn't been an artist out there that's picked up a pencil and drew the perfect person or landscape or whatever with a pencil. This stuff is all trial and error, especially somebody that sculpts. It's the same situation. And musicians stumble all the time. They even stumble over their own words whenever they're in a recording studio. Nothing is ever 100% perfect. Same thing with, filming things. I myself have messed up on filming things. One of my recent videos I put out, it's a little bit shaky, and I didn't realize I was that shaky, but I'm dealing with a lot of anxiety and steadiness issues, so that does affect me as well. And sometimes things don't come out exactly the way I want them to either. But the thing is I don't give up. and you guys shouldn't either, especially if you're willing to spend a little extra money and time fixing that item. Now, this kind of paint that I have here is more of an alcohol based kind of paint. So if you really wanted to take the paint off, and say you put too much of a certain color on there and it didn't work the way you wanted it to, you can easily wipe the paint off when it's wet, or you can just get a little bit of rubbing alcohol to be able to take some of this off. It will come off without rubbing alcohol, but I highly recommend do not use any kind of alcohol with acetone. Acetone has a chemical reaction with plastic, and it will literally melt the plastic, and not in a good way. I highly do not recommend using it for a bonding agent, because it literally just turns the plastic into mush. So avoid acetone stuff. Non-acetone based alcohol products are perfect for this kind of thing. But like I said, these little markers, I actually got these at Michael's. They were fairly inexpensive. I know they're not Gundam pins. You guys out there buy Gundam pins? That's great. I don't have the money for Gundam pins, so I spent a little bit of money at Michael's for a huge paint kit that I've used for quite some time now. And a little bit goes a long way. Remember that when you're doing these. It doesn't take a whole lot to make everything work. If you notice, as I'm doing this, touching up, I'm noticing bits and pieces that may be a little brighter than others. Well, I'm going to show you what I do in order to remedy that here in a few minutes. But when it comes to painting this stuff, you got to be patient. You got to take your time. And taking your time will actually get you further. So here I am. I'm going to take a rag. I got an older rag that I just kind of dab with, and I kind of roll dab. I kind of smear the paint a little bit. It does not leave smear marks, by the way. It just doesn't work that way. It actually does work very well, and it actually blends the two colors together. It actually got it a lot closer than what I thought it would with this experimental method I used here. This is just, like I said, trying to blend two colors for this guy. You don't actually necessarily have to do that kind of thing, though, because it's not really necessary. But this idea is just kind of something to help you guys out there if you happen to have one of these Skyjacks that's a little beat up, missing some paint, because this guy was in really bad condition. I forget who sent me these two Action Masters. It's been a long time since I actually went back and looked at any of my videos, or even remember where some of this stuff came from, because some of the stuff I know was gifted to me, and I know these two were gifts, and I tend to hang on to things that are gifted to me because it means a lot. I'm a sentimental kind of guy, so when it comes to this type of thing, I'll hang on to something a lot longer than most people will. I noticed I got a little bit of paint on the window, but that's okay, because the paint wasn't completely dry yet. So I grab my rag real quick here and kind of wipe it off. It takes the paint, not the paint off the blue off, but it does get rid of that little tiny bit of purple I think I kind of smeared on there. But it came off just fine. But as I continue on here, I just use this rag, and this rag is a little stiff. It's not a like a real soft rag, but it's kind of more of a abrasive rag, which works very well for trying to blend in colors, especially if you're just trying to do a little bit of perfection blending, especially if you're doing just photography, or if you're just doing this to put him on your shelf so that way it looks good, so you can stand up there and look good with the rest of your collection. And I know some purists out there would be like, oh well, why don't you airbrush this? Airbrushing really isn't an option where I live. Same reason why I don't own a 3D printer, because I don't have a shop, and you have to have proper ventilation for those kind of things. So if your apartment life or living in a place you have animals and pets and kids and stuff like that, and you don't want a bunch of chemical fumes and stuff around, this is the easiest way of getting around it, is by using paint pens. These paint pens work very well. I've used Sharpie as well, and people out there laugh when I say, well, yeah, you can use Sharpie. Even Adam Savage, that worked on, Mythbusters, he worked on Matrix movies, he worked on some of the Star Wars movies, he's even come out and said, yeah, I use Sharpie on things. Because it's not a bad thing. The tool doesn't matter. What matters is the intention and how it's used. And I've always said that. It does not matter. You don't have to have high-end everything. As you can see, I've got him all nice and painted up here. So let's cut from here and let's go ahead and go to the review. Welcome back to another Plasticon review. Today we're going to cover Generation 1 Action Master Skyfall. Here's Skyfall. And I am putting a bit of a repair guide in with this video just to show you guys what I did. To show you how I repaired it and what I did to kind of improve things. I know it's not 100% perfect, but this will stay in my collection. It's not really worth a lot. These guys are pretty common. If you notice right away, though, his legs are nowhere near as wobbly as they were before. That was a huge fix that I did. As for the arms honestly on these, since they're pinned in, because you really can't just pull these arms off without actually damaging the pins that actually hold them in, you can kind of grab them here and kind of wedge it a little bit, and then it will actually put enough tension. If you wanted to, you can put plumber's tape between there. That would actually probably tighten the joint a little bit, but I really didn't want to go through all that trouble to do that. But honestly, he holds his poses just fine the way I need him to, just like that. If you notice, first off though, he is really cool. I love the colors on him. He's got this kind of a magenta color of purple. It's really odd and strange. And then he's got this really kind of a real stark kind of orangish red going on with his legs and his head that matches. And not to mention that same paint color through his feet. Now if you look at the original prototype toy of him in the catalogs, he's actually completely red. I think it's actually was a good call to change him to this color because his color scheme actually works better. If you look on the back, he's got a nice cockpit on the back, just kind of invoking that he is a space vehicle or maybe a jet or something like that. And you eagle-eye viewers will be like, well, he's got a little bit of blue here and here. Well, I did, like I said, I did a little bit of customization to him, so I did add a little bit of blue here. Actually, I really think it improved it a lot. And then, not to mention, I put a new Autobot emblem right there on his chest because he needed it, and he's fixed. He's good to go. Now, one cool thing about Skyfall here is I actually kind of came up with a bit of a fan mode for him. So that way he kind of transforms. So what I'll do with him is I will take his legs and kind of angle them out, and then take the arm and put it like this, and then take the other leg and then angle it out, and then take the other arm and put it like this. And if I can get hold of those, because it's kind of hard to do with some of these because they're not meant to actually do this. Kind of becomes kind of like a space jet. Something kind of cool that I came up with. I kind of fan moded this. I think it works really well, actually, for what it is. I just think it does. Like, I think this is exactly what they could have done. I mean, honestly, if they would have just put a little pin that stuck out from the back of the heels and plugged directly into these, it easily could have become, it's actually have an alt mode in this design, which is one thing I've always thought that was cool about Skyjack, is the fact that, you know, he is a jet, so you can kind of turn him into something. So the cool thing is, you know, he's a really, really neat looking robot, and honestly, he almost has kind of a Jetfire look to him as well. So if anybody's really into your Action Masters, these guys are amazing. I think they're great. There he is next to Grimlock, and I think he looks great next to Grimlock. He looks a lot cleaner now. Eagle-eyed people out there be like, yeah, there's a tiny bit of like discoloration on him. Yeah, there's a little bit, but it's not terrible. And like I said, this in here's got the original O-ring in it, and I haven't replaced it yet, but it's not as bad as Skyjack's was. But if you notice, it's not as wobbly as it was before. Before, if I tried to set him down, his legs would want to do something like that. It doesn't do that as much down. But anyway, this has been Plasticon. This has been another Transformers Generation 1 review, and I'll see you guys around because I have plenty more coming your way. That's it for now. Bye!